Hi, it's Janice Dru-Bennett, and it is Sunday, August 8th, 2021, and I am getting ready to go onto Clubhouse for our session on growth through partnerships, and excited to share this topic with a number of co-hosts who are partnering with me. So I'm going live on Facebook and getting started. Again, this is Janice Dru-Bennett, and it is Sunday, August 8th, 2021, and we are starting the room on growth through partnerships. This is also on Zoom and being recorded and live streamed on my personal Facebook page. And then I'll also put the recording as a private link on YouTube so we can share our insights afterwards. And I know people tend to start jumping in a little after the room opens officially. And we'll have a number of co-hosts joining in and sharing their stories and insights and strategies around how they have grown through partnerships. So welcome to the stage. And I'd like to give each person a couple minutes to introduce themselves and share your perspective on partnerships. And I know we're just getting started right now. So welcome everyone. And as I mentioned earlier, we are recording this session on Zoom, and we'll be sharing it as a private YouTube link. And people are welcome to raise their hand, come up on stage. I'll likely reset the room every 5 or 10 minutes just to let people know that they can raise their hand and come up and ask any questions. And as co-hosts join, I'd like to give each person at least 2 or 3 minutes to share their story and what partnerships means to each of you. I personally think that partnerships are highly valuable from a personal perspective as well as a professional perspective. It's been a core part of my full-time work in marketing and sales, as well as a business owner and startup founder, finding partners to grow together. So I see Olu, you're unmuted. So do you want to go ahead and get started and introduce yourself and what partnerships means to you, or a tip or a strategy around growing through partners?
Hi, everyone. Hi, Janice. It's great to be here. Yeah, I'll just quickly do an intro and then probably give everyone else an opportunity to introduce themselves. Well, I would say I'm a serial entrepreneur, business mentor. I'm a professional speaker. My passion and energy is in entrepreneurship, women empowerment, leadership. And I would say, I'm a subject matter expert with a portfolio in media, travel and tourism, not-for-profits, and enterprise development. So going further, I want to just touch on what we're discussing, which has to do with partnerships. It really, I don't know what angle you want us to talk from. If I can have like a perspective, then I can share, what exactly, because it's quite broad in terms of, from what perspectives you're looking at. I'll give it back to you, Janice.
Great, thanks, Olu. And what I'll do is, for those of you who might be newer to Clubhouse, I'll pull to refresh and just go through an order based on who came into the room to kind of introduce yourselves and share 1 or 2 insights around partnerships to start. And then often people will start coming in the room throughout the first hour and then can come up on stage and ask questions, and we'll address any thoughts around growing through partnerships, what types of partnerships you've built, and any advice you give the rest of the room. So Liz, I see you next. If you want to introduce yourself, if you're able to unmute yourself.
Yes, I am able to unmute myself. I don't know how much longer I'll be able to speak tonight. It turns out, Janice, I have acute bronchitis. So at least it's not COVID. In any event, thanks for having me here tonight. And hello, everybody. I'm Liz Solar. I'm a voice actor, a writer, and host of the Embark podcast. So for many years, I worked in a very social environment. I worked in broadcasting, and then I found myself working in what I call the bat cave of, an isolation booth, recording, talking to myself in a padded room all day. The other thing that I do is write, and I also find that to be solitary and necessarily so at times, but it's not a great way to make friends and influence people. So as part of what I do is, in terms of creating partnerships, and that's one of the reasons why I'm here this evening with you, is, accountability is a great motivator when you work on your own. And so I have found ways to connect with people individually and in groups to be able to keep on track with what I do, to be able to, trade notes. So much of what we all do in terms of voice acting is marketing on our own. So we're basically we're creatives who have to sell, and most of us don't like that. So it's always good to have a team, whether it's a team of one or two other people, or a team of, a conference, to be able to share ideas and resources and be able to cheer each other on so that we're able to have sustainable careers. Another thing is that I've been immersed in a writing program for several years and have written a novel. And in fact, I'm taking this month off to basically go through final notes and have it ready to send off for an agent to look at. But again, the partnerships that I have made through being with a writers group have been invaluable, because it's already, a focus group, beta readers, it's, editors. So it's always good to have a committee in your corner, no matter what you're doing. Now, the social media aspect, I'm not as savvy about, or I'm a little bit more reticent about. So I'm really looking to both elevate people that I know in terms of, how do we get the word out about them, and being able to have that reciprocated as well. I think that's why we're all here, to elevate each other. So that's all I have to say about that, Janice. And, if I'm silent at certain times, it's just because I'm drinking tea or having a rest. But anyway, thanks.
Thank you so much for joining, Liz, and hope you feel better.
Thanks.
Olu, did you want to jump in with something?
I think I will give, I think others are yet to introduce themselves.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so why don't we keep going around? And Liz, I think your comment about building teams and having internal partners or people who can help you grow from a writing perspective, there's lots of different types of partnerships. So definitely want to dive deeper into different ways that we can apply social aspects as well as other ways of growing through partnerships. Pedro, I see you're next, and thank you so much for joining, Pedro, from Portugal. So it's in the middle of the morning for you. So and you've got some great experience with partnerships. So would love to hear your story.
Hi everyone, thank you, Janice, for the opportunity to be here with you tonight. Actually 2 a.m. here for me, but pleasure, even so. So I'm Pedro Guimaraes. I spent last over 20 years creating, developing, buying, selling, and of course failing companies. And partnerships has always been a very important part of developing my own businesses. So after leading a MarTech company for over 15 years, 2 years ago, I've decided to start a new venture, and now I'm the founder of Dozen Stitches. And I'm helping companies, founders, and business leaders face change. So I'm helping them, I'm focused on helping them face digital green transition, of course. This implies diversity, inclusion, a lot of, they used to be buzzwords, but now I think they are mandatory. And if you want to thrive in this complex ecosystem we're living in. So partnerships for me, I have a long experience, but mainly in I would say 3 areas. The first of one is I've done a lot of partnerships throughout my career with different formats, and I did from startups to established companies to companies that became public during the duration of our agreement. And I did it in many geographies: United States, Hong Kong, Israel, UK, Norway, Brazil, of course, Portugal, just to name a few. And most commonly, I was looking for a partner solution or product to increase my business. And in this scenario, my personal favorite format was the retailer's agreement. So I sell someone else's solution. So I benefit from that partner's product or solution, of course, reputation and marketing efforts. And I offer them the opportunity to add a new market to their own scope. And this is especially interesting if they are servicing global companies as I was. So I was working for the major global FMCG and retailers. Biggest lessons learned from this format were that initial negotiation process is very critical. So we either date in love or we have a short-term marriage. So transparency is critical at all times. And every time inexperienced negotiators come from either side, this tends to make the process longer and then needed and fuzzier. And for me, what worked better was a 50-50 gross revenue share. And so both parties or both sides focus on maximizing the sales and everyone benefits from their own efficiency. As downsides, well, we share results and we share money. So when it's quite tempting to, I'm just trying to sell my own stuff so I can make it more profitable. And this works both sides, can have this type of approach. The other problem is that we don't control the product and the product development. And so we have to stay focused on selling it as is. And sometimes because of that, we lose opportunities. And finally, and this is very critical, we are depending on someone else's decisions. So they can shutting down the business, get bankrupt. Sometimes it occurs, stop developing the product or even stop selling it. And some of these occur to me more than once. So based on my experience, partnerships work. And to make it work, transparency is the rule, and both parties must focus on a common goal. And that's probably the main difference between the partnership and the client-vendor relationship is focusing on a common goal. So everyone is committing in making the partnership grow. And just 2 tips if you are on the other side of the negotiation. So if you are the seller or the product provider that also occurred to me. Sometimes partners are just one-time resellers. That someone that is looking for an agreement to serve an existing need for a customer they have. So they won't actively look for more opportunities to resell your product. Therefore, partnership marketing is mandatory if you want to support your real partner's effort to sell your product and services. Finally, then to close, this last 2 years, I've been more focused on building my own ecosystem based on partnership. I don't want to have a huge structure. I want to have a huge ecosystem based on partnerships. And so more than selling their products and services, I'm looking for companies whose focus is in some way complementary to my offer. And what this changes, in fact, is that it starts, of course, for my customer needs. But now I'm not necessarily selling their products. It's much more knowing I know the right people to help me serve those needs. So more than discussing a revenue split, the key issue is assessing if we share values as companies and people, so I can be sure I'm bringing the right people to work with my customers. And usually monetization is based on the referral fee agreed in advance by both parties. And I would say the optimal solution is your client knowing if and how much you're making from that business, because some surprises can be very unpleasant and I would say dangerous. So in one sentence, values agreement alignment is critical regarding social impact, because it's like you are co-branding someone else's business with your own brand. And I think that says it all.
Thank you so much, Pedro. I absolutely agree that values alignment are essential in successful partnerships, and there's revenue share models, but shared impact is also something I think when we get together, figuring out whether we can create good together is also a core value of a lot of companies and private and nonprofit organizations as well, public and private partnerships, thinking about what the impact is on the broader community as well.
That's it. Well, due to shortage of time, I would address if questions are made, but I've experienced in doing that as part of a nonprofit. And it's interesting because you have to balance you are a nonprofit and you are partnering with companies that are for profit. So it's kind of, I would say, it can be kind of tricky. But if there's a huge values of alignment that can be done, and it must be completely clear what is everyone's role, and it works. And, at least it worked for me.
Thanks again, Pedro. PollyAnna, can you share your background and your thoughts on partnerships?
Absolutely. Thank you. So hi, everybody. I'm Polly. It's so nice to meet you. I am a messaging and publicity strategist, and I want to share partnerships in a slightly different way. And I won't take very long either. So the first types of partnerships that I want to talk about are referral partnerships. And referrals are such a powerful way to really bring highly qualified leads and prospects into your business. And in my experience, referrals tend to be my favorite people to work with. And one of the great things about referrals is if you have a great referral system with great referral partners going on, you can actually take time off of active marketing. So I actually took about anywhere between 12 to 18 months off of active social media marketing. And I was running the entire business off of referrals because I had so many coming in. So that was a really great experience. And then another one that people don't tend to think about that I think is really important is getting publicity for your business. And what I mean by that is when you are getting publicity, you are building a partnership with the media outlet. So it has to be aligned. Your interests and values have to be aligned. Your audiences have to be aligned. All of that is really important. And then when you work together on a regular recurring basis, then you have the partnership with the media outlet. And just to be clear, these are non-paid opportunities. These are earned and organic. Otherwise, they would be paid ads and that kind of thing. But those are the two types of partnership that I really believe in that have made a huge difference in my business and all the businesses that I work with. And they're just really powerful ways to drive high quality, ready to buy organic traffic to your business offers and programs. Thank you so much. I'm Polly and I'm done speaking.
Thank you so much, PollyAnna. And I completely understand from a marketing perspective as well, the sponsorship partnerships and influencer partnerships. There are so many different types, referral as well, especially in the technology space, referrals, resellers, technology integrations. There's all sorts of partnerships that companies can build. And Bobbie, also, when you come on, will likely be able to talk quite a bit about partnerships from your perspective. The next three, I see Meaghan, then Bobbie, then Cameron. So feel free to popcorn it to each other. Meaghan, are you able to jump in with your insights?
Yeah, hi. So this is actually my very first Clubhouse, so I'm super excited to be here, guys. My name is Meaghan. I'm the Goal Guru. I'm a career development coach and team facilitator, and I specialize in helping individuals and teams get better work done faster so that they have time to, go out and enjoy their lives. Excuse me. Partnerships for me have played a slightly different role, I think, than a couple of folks here, although I do love hearing how everyone has a slightly different take on what partnerships can mean to them. For me, it's been a little bit of an unofficial and kind of informal role in creating and building my business. So my practice is still relatively new, and it's just a little under a year old. But I found some really small and fun ways to make partnership work for me and kind of make this daunting and kind of isolating task of running a business by myself a little bit more fun and social. So a lot like Liz, I used to work kind of in a group and have found myself a little bit in kind of an isolated spot, as I suggested a little bit before. I used to work in digital media at HBO, and before that I was on a team at Penguin Random House. So I've always been part of these big media teams that are a whole big bunch of people working together to figure out whatever it is they're trying to publish or get out the door. And my practice originated really organically from that, right? I was a big part of a team and I was a problem solver. And so I would coach my colleagues and my teams and my bosses on how to solve the problems that they needed solving, or I would create tools for them or processes for whatever problem was really weighing the team down. And when I started my practice, I kind of found almost immediately, I was like, oh, where's my water cooler? I don't have one. And that actually really drew me into a number of platforms and applications, Alpha, Lunch Club, Wiser, a whole big bunch of these different platforms and applications that allowed me to socialize with other professionals, both in my industry and outside of it. And some of my key content has actually really emerged from just talking to people and hearing what their problems are, or hearing what their difficulties and their issues are. So one of my signature offerings is a Monday morning workshop, and it's called Monday's Motivation, and it's a half hour on Monday mornings where I help you plan your week. It's a free workshop. It's one of the ways I am able to get myself out there. It's one of the things that I'm able to really associate with planning and connect myself to that, or connect myself to that as a brand. And I really wouldn't have thought of that if it weren't for a networking introduction through a platform I've been a part of for the last 3 years called Be Social Change. And I met somebody on there, and I was texting them about planning. You know, I sit down on Sunday nights and plan my week. I actually just finished before we got on. And I texted her about plans we had, and she was like, "You're so good at planning your week. I should do that." And from there, my signature program was born. So for me, programming partnerships in that very informal way has been a key way I've been able to capitalize on just kind of being just growing through working with other people.
Thanks, Meaghan. And as a first timer, standard thing to say is I'm Meaghan and I'm done speaking when you're done, and we can pop it on to Bobbie. No problem. And feel free to, I'm still learning Clubhouses. It keeps changing as well. So welcome to your first stage, Meaghan, and thanks for sharing.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Bobbie, you want to jump in?
Absolutely. I always forget, Meaghan, so you're not alone. I will probably forget multiple times over the course of this conversation. Hi, my name is Bobbie. I'm founder of a couple different companies, and I usually tell people the day job is I run a PR and marketing firm. The night job is I run an event in the Boston market called Innovation Nights. Not too eventy these days. It's been more virtual stuff. And then the dream job is Innovation Women, which is an online speaker bureau. And I also acquired a couple of other companies over the pandemic. But when Janice was asking about partnerships originally, I was like, oh, I love this topic. Because one of the things that I love talking about is, I think, an area of partnerships that people don't often think about. It's the partnering with a company that you might otherwise think of as a competitor or co-opetition. And I feel like a lot of the partnering that I've done, I get people in the community kind of looking sideways at me and saying, that's not who we expect you to partner with. So, just as one very concrete example, when I started Innovation Nights, 2009, there were a lot of events in the community that were out there to support entrepreneurs and startups. And I thought that was fantastic. And other people were saying, like, oh, wouldn't you think of them as your competitor? Not at all. So what we did is we created a newsletter that goes out every Monday morning, which highlighted all the events in the Boston market for entrepreneurs. And we reached out to all these other organizations who are doing events for entrepreneurs and startups and said, send us your events. We will help publicize these things. And in the end, it really does come back to, how can we collect and work collectively with all of this data, with all of this information, and deliver a service to the marketplace that reflects everyone. I mean, I was doing one event every month.
I want people to be able to go to other events. I want them to know what other events there are. I want them to see Boston as a rich, supportive environment for startups. So in that particular case, it worked out super well. And I also partner with organizations for innovation women that are speakers bureaus. I'm kind of running a speaker bureau myself, but we work with a number of different speakers bureaus who put their speakers on our platform. And there have been a number of times where organizations have reached out to me and, you know, had this conversation that kind of goes something like this. Hey, I'm putting together a platform to connect event managers and speakers who just happen to be women. Me too. And, you know, quite frankly, this is a mission-based organization. We're all trying to do the same thing, and it really doesn't matter if there's more than one platform out there. It just gives more opportunity and choice for the people that are looking for that in the marketplace. This is Bobbie, and I'm complete.
Thanks, Bobbie. You definitely have a number of types of partnerships and brought up a good point in terms of potential competitors also being potential collaborators. So Cameron, would love to hear your thoughts on partnerships as well.
Thank you, Janice. Thank you for inviting me. Glad to be on stage with amazing people. Elizabeth, Pedro, PollyAnna, Meaghan, Bobbie, Janice, thanks so much for allowing me to be in the space here. I love the topic of partnerships. I think I'm still learning, so glad to be in the room and getting some different breakdowns of information. Particularly, there's three kinds of partnership that I'll highlight in talking about my career. I opened up a staffing company in 2011, but before that, I started getting some of my grounding in the industry from joining an association. So I think that's a great way to partner with your industry and find partnership and sponsorship opportunities, you know, for which we're often calling partnership opportunities right now. That was something that greatly elevated me in the eyes of folks, and I was hearing that being talked about just in terms of the value of association and how that kind of raises your status among folks, and that's a beautiful thing. And then referral partnerships, as PollyAnna was talking about, just an amazing thing for Toth. And staffing is a local staffing business. We have some catering partners who, you know, if you take care of your referral partners, they will take care of you. With that, really just does make life a whole lot easier. It's less cold marketing. You know, I hire a lot of people. I've done 700 face-to-face plus interviews over the last 10 years. And if there's anything I've learned, you know, having somebody call you, having looked at, you know, the information in front of them, it just saves time. It makes things a whole lot more comfortable. It makes things move swiftly. So the value of being known is a big deal. And so association referral is such a huge thing. And now as we've moved into the pandemic world, and I started at BizDev Live in 2020, I have gotten into another place with the business partnership. In November, Joe, my Spiro asked me, said, I got this LinkedIn Live thing, but I don't quite know what to do with it. And I had experience running my show, BizDev Live. And so we created a partnership, never met each other face to face. We're a member of an organization called Master Networks, and kind of knew of each other that way. And it was kind of the right fit. We got off to it, and just the value of finding somebody that, like Pedro was saying, there's a good alignment, the stars align for you both. And I would say it would just add to that in terms of finding alignment. You hear stories like Barbara Corcoran, so, you know, she's kind of the marketing person. She found the person that was her kind of soulmate for the office, handling the back office things. So finding a partnership where the puzzle pieces fit together is a big deal. And I'll say this one final thing on partnership. If there's anything I've learned, again, what I'm excited about being in this conversation, partnership is how you grow. Partnership is how you expand. Partnership is how you have a larger impact on the world. So very exciting conversation. My name is Cameron Toth, and I'm done speaking.
Thanks so much, Cameron. And for Meaghan and anyone else who's new to Clubhouse, If you see our microphones flashing on and off, that means that we are clapping for something, or we applause what's being said. So you just mute and unmute yourself, and that shows an applause. And if anyone is on Zoom or in the audience, feel free to raise your hand and come up on stage, or ask a question via chat, and I'll be happy to throw it in. One question I'd like us to talk about would be how we've seen a partnership not work out. And I think that point about values alignment might be one kind of factor that might cause a partnership not to help us grow. But I'd love to, have people jump in and answer that question in terms of what's a partnership that hasn't worked for you?
I think this is such a great question. And I'm just going to jump in because my initial thought is partnerships that don't work tend to be when there's a miscommunication, or the intentions aren't clear, or the exchange is not clear. So one of the things that I like to do to avoid this is to just really make sure about 2 or 3 different times, making sure that everyone is on the same page and has the same expectations. If you can manage the expectations at the beginning, then you'll have an easier time understanding if the partnership is going to work or if it's not going to work. So that's something that I highly recommend. I'm Polly, and I'm done speaking.
Thanks, Polly. And feel free, anyone, just to unmute yourself and jump in.
Oh, I think Lulu wants to jump in. I'll talk later.
Okay, thanks, Pedro. Thank you for giving me the stage. Yes, I want to just take her from where Polly, left her from, talking about, how to, what happens when partnerships, don't go through as you expected. And I want to say that one of the things, like she mentions, the expectations, in terms of maybe miscommunication, and I would hinge that on miscommunication, because, we come from different backgrounds, we have different nuances, we have different ways of doing business, and sometimes we communicate differently, and then this affects our expectations. Another thing is the value system. What kind of values do you uphold? And again, it boils down to your background, where you're coming from, either continent-wise or your experiences. But one thing that I want to look at, another perspective, is that in partnerships, there is no guarantee that a partnership will be a success. Okay, it's like I think Pedro mentioned, it's like a short-term marriage or something. You're going into this thing, you don't know how it's going to swing. Is it going to go south? Is it going to go well? But you've got to be open-minded in terms of, say for instance, it goes Ori, okay? You're going to have to do like an audit of, okay, what went wrong? How did it go wrong? Why did it go wrong? Not feeling too bad about it, not being discouraged, cut yourself some slack, and put that experience under your belt and move on to say, okay, these were the areas that I went wrong, or that the thing went wrong, and I would want to bring that to some particular partnerships that didn't work for me. I would say, for instance, I had this invite. I led a trade mission to Atlanta, Georgia, I think in 2018, and it was an all-women entrepreneur agri-focused conference, and there, part of the engagement that we had, we had a former U.S. ambassador to then, my country, back home, being present, and from the engagement, from the feedback and interaction, we went into inviting that particular former U.S. ambassador for an International Women's Day conference the following year, and it was I would say that the expectations were not clear. She had her expectations. We were a greenhorn in what we were trying to do, and at the end of the day, it was a successful conference. But there were a lot of, you know, we had a fallout. It was bad, but you know, looking back, it took 2 years to get out of that. You know, mess and you know, but looking back at what we didn't achieve as opposed to what we achieved, it was more of what was the experience that, you know, we took from that. So for me, going forward, I go into partnership to, you know, now we, you know, like not 2 eyes anymore, but maybe like 4 eyes, my antenna on. Do you understand what I'm saying when I said this? You know, and that really helps in having a good partnership further down the line. You know, so I look at you know, expectations, values, and also a mindset. Okay, when we look at partnerships, it's either you're a taker or you're a giver, okay? And some in a partnership, you want to know, are you giving as, you know, as much as are you taking, you know? And that comes back to your personal values of what are you bringing to the table? What are you bringing, you know, to make this partnership work? You know, your creativity, your experience, and that has to align with whoever, you know, you're trying to have that partnership, you know, with. So I see more that when we talk about partnerships, we should go into the business of the partnership, but what that business rides on are these things that can make or mar the partnership. Okay, so I want us to talk more on from that angle. What do you bring to the table? What kind of, you know, values do you have? What are the expectations? And communication is extremely, when I say extremely, it is extremely important in a partnership. So without spending too much time on those points, I want to give it back to Janice to give the next speaker, Pedro, I guess, an opportunity. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, Olu. And yes, Pedro, feel free to jump in now.
Okay, thanks. Well, let me start by saying I fully agree. Communication is absolutely critical. I would split this into different things. One thing is if you are working under I would say corporate, more structured partnership, well, I would say you have to have the decision maker plus the team involved. I remember one of the first partnerships I did, I was having a phone call with the CEO from the other company, and it taught me a lesson for life. It was pretty much like this. So Pedro, I want to know your marketing director, your sales director, because I know CEOs, we are, you know, all are involved and we are very positive, but unless I'm sure your team is aligned with this partnership, I'm not comfortable to start it. And that was a lesson for me. So, so you have to have everyone involved, and you have to have a clear formal contract. And it's very critical if you are doing this on, I would say, structured way. The thing that works better for me is train the trainer. So you have to have someone in your team on your partner's team that will be trained to know everything about your product, and then will get involved in its own team. So it reduces the effort for the other side, and things can work more smoothly. And if this is not all assured, there's a huge probability that that partnership will fail, because either from alignment from the other side, or from lack of involvement or knowledge on the product or solution. Somewhere in the near future, someone will say, well, I'm not happy with this is not working properly, so I better just leave. On the other hand, if we are talking about a more personal or informal partnership, my team will be investing as much as we can in knowing the other part, the other people, the other team, whatever, to ensure that we are always aligned. Because if we, say we are partners, but then everyone works very apart, there is, I would say, a huge probability once again that after a while, our roads start to diverge, and we kind of think we are partnering for something, but everyone is taking care of its own life, and it becomes a very, I would say, utilitarian relationship. So I remember my partner when I have the need, and when he has the need, I would say, "Hey, man, it's not a good time for me. Let's get back to that later." So investing time in actually knowing the other team or the other person and get involved and ensuring that we are on the same on the same road, and we are sharing things and sharing information and sharing knowledge and sharing opportunities, seeing how can we benefit from this. And just to end, and this would be another hour just discussing. I'm a great believer on Richard Barnett's 7 levels of consciousness theory. I don't know if you know that, but to give you an idea, basically the first 2 levels are I would say the most frequent feeling is fear, because we come from a scarcity standpoint. So we either have to fight to keep the things we have, or since they are scarce, we have to fight to have things that we still don't have. When you are the last 3 levels of consciousness, the main feeling is love, and because we live on the plentiness mode. So I think we need partnerships to work, require people or companies to be on those I would say more higher levels of consciousness. So we believe that there is more and more and more to come and more to develop, and we can benefit from the relationship. When I say benefit, it's not me benefiting from the other person or the other company, but that the sum 1 + 1 = 3, because that's the beauty of plentiness. So there is something else to achieve, something else to create, something, new opportunities. I think it was Bobbie that said, well, I was doing something, I had competition, so I got them in, so I could serve better my audience, and that is the I would say a great definition of plentiness. It's not because I see someone is competing from the same space that where I want to position myself that I should try to hide the other options. I should bring them in, so that would position myself on a better position to the ones I'm serving. And on the other hand, that can create great opportunities for me by interacting with them and saying, well, I can focus on this, you can focus on that. Well, if you don't take care of this, I would say, not that tiny issues, you can easily see yourself in a position where you say, this is a commercial deal, and someone is trying to make the most, and not trying to make I would say, a very even split of things. It's just trying to, if there's 10, I want to take 6. If there's 6, I want to take 4. Instead of saying, if there's 10, how can we make together can make 15? Instead of dividing the 10. And I'm done for now.
Thanks, Pedro. I love the mindset of abundance and thinking, how do we make the pie bigger instead of, how do we split a limited pie? And as partnerships grow, I think that's creating more pies together is part of solid partnerships. And I'm really also interested in the UN Sustainable Development Goals, with the 17th one being partnerships and how we can work together instead of fighting over resources, creating new resources and creating value together. And I know Pedro said earlier, often doing a 50-50 split from a revenue perspective. I'm curious if others have different models that they've developed with partners, what they've seen worked. So now that we've talked a little bit about what hasn't worked, I'd like to go back to, what has been effective for you as you've brought on referral partners, and how are you finding them? I think that type of advice could be really helpful for people who are looking for partners for the first time. How do you come up with your partner framework? And that might be a very complex question to answer in, the next 15, 30 minutes. But Cameron, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was just saying, the expectations thing is a big deal. Meeting people, I think for those that really took advantage of the virtual options this year, obviously Clubhouse is a big deal, right? Janice getting on here and meeting people. I think I've met more people over the last year and a half than maybe the last 5 years combined. And I'm normally meeting a lot of people because I do participate in networking events, and obviously I have a lot of staff in and out of my office, but really just amazing taking advantage of the technology piece. But expectations, I started one of the most formal partnerships with Steve during the Master Connection series show, and it's not something that I would have ever done probably previous to the pandemic, starting something up with somebody that I didn't have a close personal relationship with, but we aligned on our values, and it was a win-win. We knew kind of what we wanted to do and where we wanted to go with it, and trusted each other. And I think whether you're talking about a marriage, whether you're talking about working with staff, the expectations, the trust piece of it is the biggest deal. And then add on to that, just kind of mental health kind of stuff. It's surprising how often it comes up, but just making sure that everybody's in a good place, healthy mentally. The doors for communication are open so that the opportunity when a problem does come up, that it gets addressed, it doesn't fester, it doesn't create a problem, because I think that's what can turn a really great partnership into a really terrible one really, really quickly. So just, nipping those problems in the butt, because I was hesitant to answer the question before. I think we've all heard the horror stories of bad partnerships, but the way to create really great partnerships is to really make sure your expectations are known, the communication is open, keeping everything healthy. And if you can, really incorporating people into your life in one way or another so that everybody understands those doors for communication are open, because it's easy, especially if things are going well, for walls and doors to go up without you even needing to, because you're putting systems and processes in place and everything. So just maintaining that mentally healthy connection between you and your partners is a big, big, big deal. My name is Cameron Toth, and that's Steve.
Thanks, Cameron. Anyone else want to jump in? Bobbie and Meaghan, I see both of you.
Yeah,
Bobbie, you can go.
Okay. One of the things that I usually tell people is if you're doing partnerships, make sure you get everything in writing. Just because you want to be so clear about what your expectations are and what your expectations are of the other person. When we're doing partnerships, one of the things I like to do is literally put in a table. I'm doing this, you're doing that. Every time that you have a partnership with somebody and you have a document like that, you can refer back to it. It's like, hey, remember when we talked about this thing? And somebody's like, no. Well, if it's in writing, they are going to be remembering it. I have to admit, the couple of times I've had partnerships that haven't gone so well, I've either jumped the gun or I haven't had things in writing. And when I say jump the gun, I was so excited about something that I went forward with it. I did my part. And then the other person's like, oh, thank you very much. Bye. I was like, are you kidding me? And that leaves just such a bad taste in your mouth. And by the way, it's so rare. It really is. I mean, I think most people go into partnerships with really good intentions, and only very rarely do you get somebody who takes advantage and then scoops. So this is Bobbie, and I'm complete.
Thanks, Bobbie. And it's interesting you mentioned always get things in writing, as I was just thinking about informal versus formal partnerships and how sometimes we don't. But it is always good to clarify expectations and have it documented.
Yeah, and I would say informal versus formal. I would get both in writing. I think there are formal contracts, and then there is the informal, I'm going to send you an email with the listing of things that we just talked about, or a follow-up message, something to get it in writing. It doesn't have to be some big, deep contract, but just have something that you have in writing. And I'm complete.
Thanks, Bobbie. Meaghan, you want to jump in now?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. I just want to say first, off the top, I have a product management background, so I fully agree with everything Bobbie was saying about getting stuff in writing. I'm a big fan of meeting notes, and very concise highlights versus action items with names attached is one of my favorite kind of informal approaches. It's absolutely my favorite way to approach that kind of conversation. But one thing that's really struck me as we've been talking is, we're talking a lot about expectations and how to set expectations. And one of the most powerful ways I've seen to set a very clear expectation when you're working in any kind of partnership and any kind of collaboration is really to focus in on shorter term goals than you think you might. A lot of times I see people kind of go off the rails by trying to set these really, really big, really audacious goals. And I love a big audacious goal, big hairy audacious goal, I think they're called. But I love setting ambitions really high. But the really practical foundation for moving forward and accomplishing things, in my experience, has really been getting tangible about the next best steps and really focusing in on the next, 2 weeks, the next, I love a good sprint planning session. I love a good 90-day plan. And just, kind of taking things in small steps and letting the partnership or the path of the content kind of evolve as you go. I'm Meaghan, and I am complete.
Thanks, Meaghan, and welcome people who are joining the room. We're talking about growth through partnerships, and everyone has shared a bit about their stories around partnerships, what's worked, what hasn't. I see, Robert, you've come on stage and wanted to invite you to introduce yourself and ask any questions or share your insights around how you've grown through partnerships. Robert, are you able to speak?
Sure, I'm able to speak. I'm a professional networker, and everything I look at is joint venture or collaboration. So I'm all about partnerships. I do them all the time. In fact, one of the people that I met, based on the value that I have added, and I've always liked to do things on handshake. I realize it's better to get it in writing, but if somebody's going to, so to speak, screw you, it's like I'm going to, I'll just leave the situation. I just want to be involved with people that, number one, I get along with. We've got a similar vision, and that we are serious and committed about making things work. And so one of the people I met through networking, she actually gave me a percentage of her company. Yes, that there was a contract there. I'm her CMO, and what we do is get we get clients for high-paying coaches. But I'm, and we don't charge up front. We only charge based on results. But to me, it's about developing partnerships, developing relationships, and I'm happy to help wherever I can help. And I'm pretty well complete unless anybody's got questions.
Thanks, Robert. And it's interesting because there are different perspectives around, signed agreements versus handshakes. And I had heard a story of a CEO who never signed a single contract. And I think that there are risks involved with that. And I also understand the kind of you build this trusted relationship, and your word is your reputation as well. So Pedro, I see you unmuted. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, just wanted to add a few things. I'm more on the writing part of the discussion, even though it taught me that it's relevant. Let me share one experience I had. I had a conversation. One day I was approached by someone I knew that was working for a company that is sort of us as a client, and I found it would be better to work with them as a partner. And then we started discussing that, and he brought the CEO, and was someone in charge of biz dev. He became later the chairman of the company. And on the process of discussing the actual terms of the contract, we were able to know each other, not just from a personal standpoint, but from a company standpoint, and I was able to understand how experienced they were in doing partnerships. So it took us 6 months to discuss that. It was not a legal discussion, but the opportunity to discuss the terms of our agreement. And it can be a heads of agreement, it can be a signed letter, you can choose the format you want. But the process of building that agreement taught us exactly where we were coming from and what was the common goal that we were looking for. And one thing that works for me it's very important, is to share what I want and what I don't want, and what I want to do and what I don't want to do, and what am I willing to do and what I'm not willing to do. And if you can answer these three questions, based on my experience, you give a huge step forward, because everyone starts to understand, because we are now discussing things, we can work together, it would be marvelous, and everything will work great. And of course, we can foresee everything, but if we address these three questions, we actually kind of put ourselves in the position of actually doing the thing. So we kind of discover, well, actually, I never thought about it, and I'm not comfortable on doing that part, or to be able to do that part, I would have to have a better remuneration, whatever, it doesn't matter. But that discussion is a way to nurture a relationship. And for example, tomorrow I'm going to have a call with someone. I'm about to start a partnership because I have a customer who has a need, and I work with this customer, and I'm serving him on a specific area. But we have a discussion a few weeks ago, and I said, well, listen, I'm in this area, so I can help you sort a lot of things around the issue. I'm helping you directly. And they called me last Friday. They said, hey, listen, Pedro, we have this need. Can you bring us, introduce us to someone? And I was looking to my, the list of companies I know that work on that area, and I decided to move with one. So I had the first conversation with my normal contact in that company. And I would say, listen, and I told him, listen, I'm working with this type of company. I didn't say the name yet. Disclosure will be tomorrow. I said, I'm working with these guys, this type of guys. They need this. I thought about you. So I have two questions for you. One is your company available to serve this amount of need? And the guy told me, yes, we are. Of course, we have a limit, but we can go up to there. And I said, okay, I'm comfortable with that. And the second one was a direct question, said, listen, I'm going to expose myself by introducing you to these guys. That can harm me, can have a huge negative impact on my relationship with my current customer. Have you experience in doing this? Have you ever done partnerships? How do you normally address that? And based on that discussion, I booked a call tomorrow with their CEO, because I did like a pre-screening based on my normal contact, someone I know from other experiences I had in the past. So in short, what I'm trying to say on a very, I would say, long way is you need to invest your time in knowing the other part, because you are not doing, you can be doing partnerships. For the last example I just gave you, I have a need and I need to find a solution. Or you can be doing it because you say, well, these guys are in the same area I am, and let's try to find, if you can find ways to work together and expand our opportunities there. And I would just like to end with something. Probably one of the biggest differences digital transition brought us in the last years was that prior to that, we would think on a, I would say, value chain way. So I am selling this and to this person, and I'm adding this value that person is gonna pick on the things I sell, add this value and sell. That it was a normal chain, a very linear one. Nowadays everyone is working on an ecosystem. So today I can be your partner, tomorrow I can be your competitor, the next day I can be your client, the other day I can be your supplier. Okay, so we can see ourselves on a different set of situations. And unless we are very aware of this and we build real strong relationships without say, adjacent companies or person or people, we can be on a very uncomfortable way. And that is not, and I truly believe we can thrive if we work this way. And if we engage in a partnership, try to establish it as clear as possible. It can be on a one pager, You know, no need to have a huge contract and you spend thousands of dollars with lawyers, but make things very clear, because then you can focus on the common goal and not discussing things that could be addressed up front. And I'm good for now. Hope this helped.
Yes, thank you, Pedro. And I absolutely agree that doing due diligence is absolutely essential, especially when you're introducing folks, and have gotten, feedback in the past too, like that if I'm too quick to introduce someone without making sure it's a good match, that actually reflects on my reputation. So that's definitely something I've learned over time. And Olu, I saw that you unmuted, although I also see Alice joined in, and I'd love for her to introduce herself and share some thoughts about partnerships as well. Olu, did you want to jump in real quick, or do you want to see?
I'll wait for her to go in, and
Okay.
then I'll come back later.
Great, thank you.
Oh, hi, everyone. I'm sorry I jumped in late. I'm Alice Chan from MOMCOMNYC, and the experiences I've had with partnerships is on the people who have a similar demographic as me.
I think we might have lost you for a second there, Alice.
Oh, sorry, it's a bad reception. So in terms of partnerships, I have been very selective with the brands that I work with, that I vet, and I trust that what they're selling, producing aligns with my own mission. So I would promote them, and also with other Instagram accounts similar to mine, we would have share days and share groups. We would share something of mine that resonates with their demographic, and the brands that I work with, the partners that I collaborate with, I just make sure that we're all aligned in the same mission, and that gives it more of an authentic voice. So that's kind of like where my take is. I don't just partner with just anybody, but I feel like partnerships does really help with growth, because you're reaching some sort of, you're reaching a wider audience, obviously, and you're also helping out with other brands promoting what they're selling. And there's also a very strong way of strong community on Instagram. I feel like the more you find partners that are within your similar demographic, the stronger the community is. And sometimes people will be more inclined to help you, like boost your promotion, like if you have a show or an event or service. People find that you're more authentic if you have that community building. You have to cultivate that community, and that comes through authentic voice. Things that you brand, you promote, should be something that you have vetted and you honestly believe in. And I think when people see that authenticity, there's trust in there, and it makes if people will want to share your content. So I'm Alice Chan. I'm done speaking if anyone has questions or comments.
Thanks, Alice. And I think your point about finding shared audiences through your brand partnerships and being selective and vetting, all of that aligns with kind of building strong relationships and making sure there's values alignment as well. Olu, did you want to jump in, or does anybody have questions, or Alice, you wanted to respond to that? Oh.
Yeah, thank you, Janice. I just wanted to add to what Bobbie and Meaghan had said earlier. I'm a relationship builder, and most of my partnerships have been through the networks and the events that I have attended and moved them forward to building partnerships, and to support what I think Meaghan said about, having audacious goals. There's nothing wrong in having audacious goals. And the only thing when such partnerships go the other way, what I do is, do an audit of the 3 W's that I said, what went wrong. And that's where I want to align with what Bobbie said, being, just jumping the gun. And I had to self-audit, I jumped the gun. I was overly excited. I was just, I didn't have it written in black and white. I had a lot of assumptions. So, and when it came to certain areas where I needed to express, my reservations about 1 or 2 things, I was just bumbling on, just being excited. So doing that audit, we need to just backtrack and look at, being able, going forward for me, saying, whatever partnerships now that I want to form, I take a couple of steps back. I'm not coming from that overly excited point of view. I want to have my head screwed on my shoulders, and then also, I want to be authentic with my feelings, expressing my reservations, being open and honest, look at the gray areas, and perhaps, balance the, the proposed partnerships with either people in my industry or someone that I hold in high esteem, to say, hey, am I looking at, things, very well? Do I need to, put A, B, C, or D? That kind of gives me a third party or, an external perspective that helps me to not go into the same kind of situation that that I went into. So going forward for me, I see communication. I see being able to, just focus and understand what exactly, you're going into. What are the gray areas? Are we totally honest with, what we want to achieve, or what the other person or other company has suggested? And also talking about having a good team that can help look at all the nitty gritty, the dotting the I's, the crossing the T's, and ensuring that you have a good document, because once you have a faulty document, it's going to screw you at the end of the day. So I think for me, I love partnerships because they help you grow exponentially beyond what you can do, what the company can do, because you're aligning your expertise, you're aligning your strengths, and also looking at where you're weak, where you're strong, or vice versa. And that takes the business or the company or the vision or whatever it is, the project, beyond what you could have done. So partnerships will continue to be, an integral part of, of growth in the business. And then, it's just how do we ensure that we maximize, these potentials would be, what we should, focus on. I think with that, I am done, and hand it back to you, Janice. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much, Alu. And I would love for us to each give one kind of key tip around partnerships, and usually close out the room with a key takeaway from each person. And if there are any more questions, we can also address any more questions if people want to comment on anything. But Alice, why don't we start with you and kind of go backwards up the room with any kind of key takeaways or tips around partnerships from your perspective?
Yeah, thank you, Janice. My key tip would be find something that you have in terms of your skill set, a unique skill set that you could offer as a value for your partner. And I think that would create a good dynamic and a relationship, because an ongoing relationship, they'll know that you can offer X, Y, Z, and that person or that brand can also offer you ABC. So I'll find a value, a skill set that's unique that you can also offer to your brand partners. Thank you, Janice.
Thanks, Alice. Bobbie?
I would say my big advice is trust, but verify and document. Keeping it simple. I'm Bobbie and I'm complete.
Thanks, Bobbie. Meaghan?
I would similarly say something fairly simple, but just focus much smaller than you think you need to. Focus on the smallest version of the project you can get out the door and grow from there. I'm Meaghan, and I have spoken.
Thanks, Meaghan. Cameron?
Thank you for having me, Janice. I'd say I love all the advice, the trust and document. Love that a lot, Bobbie. I live by that. I'd say be open. If I have any big advice, I think partnership is going to come from a lot of places that you may not have expected, and so just being open to it and receptive to it, and then remembering to serve. Right, you find somebody that serves you, make sure you're serving them back. Make sure you nurture those partnerships, because those are the things that will grow you and grow your business and grow your impact with the world. So just being open to it, finding partnership in whole lots of different places. The more people that you're able to serve, the more you'll earn. So just keeping that in mind as you move along in the world. That's my big piece of advice. I'm done speaking.
Thanks, Cameron. Olu?
Yeah, my take would be on communication. Get to have as much conversations, as much understanding, and ask as many questions, and not be, don't think this question is not necessary. Just have as much conversations as you can, back and forth, until you are on the same table with what A means and what B understands that to be, because that is what sums up everything that you're going to do. Miscommunication is going to throw everything out of the window. Thank you very much, Janice, for having me. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Olu. Polly? PollyAnna, are you able to unmute now, or? I'm going to jump to Pedro and see if you can come back to you, Polly. Pedro?
Right. So I would say be very clear about what you are looking for and what you can offer. Invest in know your partner or potential partner and nurture that partnership. Create a trust relation based on communication and transparency, but do this continuously, because it's very likely that both parties will need to adjust and to pivot along the way. So the only way to make it work on the longer term is not just keeping the channel open. And investing in that relationship, always with open communication, very transparent, and always willing to adjust and actually to incorporate the other side needs, and share with them every time you need to make things evolve. If both parties can engage in that way, I think the partnership can be not just successful, but it can last longer. And it was a pleasure being here with you all, and I learned a lot. And thank you, Janice. And I'm done speaking.
Thank you so much, Pedro. Polly, do you want to jump in? Are you able to unmute yourself? And if you can't, that's fine. I actually wanted to also share, when I joined the company I'm with right now, the chief channel officer, and she's now the global head of digital sales, Vivian Chan, had mentioned kind of prioritization and sequencing as kind of important around channel partnerships and alliances. And I think that's something that I've kind of kept top of mind, thinking about the different partnerships and prioritizing them, as well as figuring out the timing around them. So I think that is my kind of takeaway that I have in terms of thinking about partnerships from a high level, and as we continue to grow together and develop our relationships, I think it's been a real pleasure having all of you in this room, and I hope that we can continue to grow ourselves through partnerships. Any final comments or questions, or shall we close out the room?
Just say thanks, and thanks to everyone. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Janice.
Yes, thank
Thank
you. Have a good one.
Take care.
Thank you.